Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, The Generous, Loving Energy of Money, the 7-week journey to realize your soul's purpose through your relationship with money. I'm Lisa Bonise, and I'm looking forward to learning along with you during this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Sarah McCrum and address questions about her upcoming 7-week course, The Generous, Loving Energy of Money, which begins Wednesday, July 10th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in this course, even if you can't attend the live sessions, but first, I want to introduce our guest. Sarah McCrum is a leading money consciousness coach and the author of Love Money, Money Loves You, and Energy on Demand, Master Your Personal Energy and Never Burn Out. Sarah is the co-founder of The Consciousness of Money, a program that teaches us how money is interwoven through every moment of our lives, connecting us all in an invisible web of exchange. She guides students to explore how they think, feel, and act around money in order to discover the beauty of engaging with a consciousness which supports our deepest creativity and well-being. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Sarah, who's going to begin our conversation by sharing a teaching and an opening practice. Welcome, Sarah. It's so great to be with you today.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And yes, it's great to be with you too and with everybody who's watching this recording. So as Lisa just mentioned, I'm going to start with a teaching, and this is going to be, I'm going to challenge you a little bit with this. The thing about this whole notion about money being connected with love, if you watched the interview I did a couple of weeks ago, you may have come across me talking about this idea before. The thing about that is that it's very challenging compared to what most of us have been used to believing about money up until now. So there may be people sitting here in this group who feel that money has never, ever been a loving presence in your life. You may be really concerned about things that get done with money, the way people behave around money, and I absolutely understand your concerns. They are totally legitimate concerns. And yet at the same time, what I've found is that as I've shifted my relationship with money from a very unconscious one that I used to have, it has made a huge difference to my life and also to the way that I can engage with those kinds of big, challenging, difficult topics to do with money. And so as we go into this practice, I want to invite you to lay aside for a moment the emotion you may feel around money. And we'll come back to that later. All the questions I'm happy to answer. But what I would like to do is introduce you first of all to this other money energy that is really different from what we have been led to think money is. If you can get a taste of this, what I think of as the true energy of money, then we can start to look at the difficult questions in that context, okay? So I'm going to plunge you in at the deep end. I learned a lot of what I've learned about money by ending up in a kind of conversation with money, where money was writing my pen for me, telling me about what it really is. It was a very extraordinary experience, and it challenged almost everything I knew about money. So I've been on this journey myself extremely personally. I had no money at all when that happened. I was actually not able to pay all my bills at the time, okay? And so what we're going to do, I'm going to teach you how to have maybe your first, so there may be a few people who've done this before, your first conversation with money, okay? So we're going to start by taking a few minutes to relax, because we need to be in a relaxed state to be able to listen to money, if you like. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and I'm going to lead you step by step through this experience of having a little conversation with money just to get you going. Okay, so sit as comfortably as you can wherever you are. You don't need to have a poker straight back. And close your eyes and breathe into your lower belly. Have both feet on the ground if you can. And let's start by grounding our energy. We need to be really grounded when we talk about money. So let your energy drop down into your chair, down into the ground, and then deep down into the earth, way, way beneath the earth's surface, going down towards the center of the earth. You may be able to feel it as if you're in an elevator, or you may not, and it doesn't matter. And let your whole body relax. And let's just put aside for a while all our past stories about money. Just let them go for now, and then we'll come back to them later. So let your mind quieten down as much as you can. And don't worry if it's chattering away. Minds do that. Relax your lower belly and your hips and your legs and your feet. Relax your stomach and your chest, your spine and your neck. Relax your arms and your hands and your head, your face and your eyes. And let's open up to experience this energy of money. So simply allow yourself to be open, to let fresh energy flow through you, which you may be able to feel. And we're opening to the energy that is behind our system of money. So it's not the notes and the coins themselves, it's this very powerful energy behind that whole system. It's an energy of creating and manifesting and of connecting all of us together. And I'm going to teach you a very simple way to initiate a conversation with money. And before we start that, I'll just explain that money might communicate with you, so to speak, in different ways. So some people hear words. Sometimes you think, oh, maybe this is my mind. Don't worry about that. Just trust whatever happens. Some people feel something. Some people see pictures or images or shapes. Some people just have a deep knowing. So there are many, many different ways that you might experience money. And you may not feel anything. That's also fine. If it doesn't work for you this time, it'll work another time. It's just something that takes a little bit of practice. So don't worry about that. So the way that I start is just to say inside my mind, so to speak, hey, money, are you there? So just do that and see what kind of response comes. You might just feel a little shiver, a little spark inside you, something. And then let's follow that up. You can even say it out loud if it's easier for you and say, can I have a conversation with you? Let's just ask permission. I've never known the answer to be no, but it somehow opens the gate, if you like, to make it easier. And let's start by asking money a simple question. Ask money to show you what it really is, to reveal something of its true nature to you, and simply open yourself to whatever comes. You can just say, money, please, what are you really? Please show me. and trust whatever happens. And you can ask money, how can I relate better with you? Again, you're asking in a way of saying, please show me in some way. How can I relate better to you? And really allow yourself to feel, okay? The feeling is really important here. And in this very short initial conversation, just ask one question that you would really like to ask, something that you really care about and would like to ask this energy of money. And as we come to an end, let's just ground our energy again. Let the energy sink down into the ground. And bring yourself back into a fully awake position. Open your eyes when you're ready. And I'll just say a single thing about this, that it is really common when you have a conversation with money that the responses come very, very fast. And often they feel surprising, often really beautiful. And money doesn't always say a lot. Okay, so if you just got a little flash of something, that's the opening of the portal, so to speak. That's the opening of the conversation. That's something that you can build on. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for jumping in with me right into the deep end.
All right. Wow. Well, thank you, Sarah. We have the rest of our time together to dive into our viewers' questions for Sarah as we prepare for her upcoming course. Again, that's called The Generous, Loving Energy of Money, and it begins Wednesday, July 10th. And if you want to check out the website and learn more about the 7-week course, you can visit lovingenergyofmoney.com. That's lovingenergyofmoney.com to see the full description. So let's go ahead and get started with your questions. If you have a question for Sarah, go ahead and type it in. I'll be happy to read it out loud. And in the meantime, we've already got a few questions ready to go. So let's go ahead and start with them. We've got two people asking a very similar question. So let me read them both. First, Irina is asking, how can I understand whether I really love money and money loves me? And similarly, Laurentina wants to know, how do I find out what my belief is about money?
Okay, so let's look first of all at this question of loving money and money loves you. Look, the first day you hear that idea, for most people it's really surprising. So when I first started writing about it, I didn't know how to love money and I didn't know that money loved me. And so I had to kind of discover what that feels like. Now, the practice I just shared with you is a good place to start because you might have felt something. You might have felt this energy of money, and it's such a beautiful energy. And if you feel that, you can actually feel that the energy is full of love and that it really is everywhere. It's all around us. And so you start to have an experience of it, and it's through experience that you'll really know. So one thing you can do is practice asking questions of money and seeing what kind of responses you get, because the responses are usually so loving and so generous and so kind that you can't really have doubt anymore. It's really interesting. I've done that with so many people, and almost everybody comes back with this incredibly loving, gentle response that surprises them. So that's a really good way to grow the relationship. And you know, Irina, it's really just like if you get a new partner, you fall in love with somebody, but it takes time to actually really love and be loved and receive love. So this is not an overnight thing. This is a journey, literally. It's something that we can grow in for the rest of our lives, really, because this is a relationship that goes on. all the way through. Now, the other question was about knowing what you believe about money. That's an interesting one. What I found really helpful, like what many people do, is start to try to go into their minds and think about, okay, what do I believe about money? And that's interesting, but a more powerful way I've found is to connect, first of all, with this energy that is really loving. And if you can start to feel that relationship, then you'll start to notice what you believe about money at the moment, because you'll suddenly realize, oh my goodness, that doesn't feel very loving. Somebody said to me recently, he said, it feels to me as though money is a next door neighbor and I've never opened the gate between our properties and they're covered in brambles and I've never asked them to dinner. That kind of thing. So you'll start to feel, in comparison with the love, where you have a belief that contradicts that love. And then little by little, you'll uncover those beliefs. And as you bring love to them and this loving energy of money, it's much easier to resolve and dissolve those beliefs that way than it is to kind of dig into your mind to try to find them.
Okay, thank you. That was very, very helpful. Let's go to a question here from Amanda, who says, people say you don't need money to be happy, but how does one go on a family holiday without it? I really want to reconnect with my family and have fun enjoying life.
Well, honestly, I actually just think it's simply not true that you don't need money to be happy. You can live in the poorest place in the world. You still need to connect with money. No human being lives, as far as I know, completely on their own. Even, traditional monks used to need to deal with money, but they had to go begging. That's still asking for somebody to give them something. So in all our notions about you don't need money to be happy, we need to be real about it. And I think that's part of the beauty of opening up this whole message about money, that money is something that's connected with love, because it actually gives you permission to say, yes, I do need money. And actually, I would like to have more of it, maybe, so I can go on a family holiday. Because as you said, yeah, maybe if you live near the beach, you can kind of get together without spending any money, but it's unlikely. We can't do anything without spending money. So I think the thing to understand about that phrase, first of all, is that money is not the answer to happiness in terms of the more money I get, the happier I'm going to be. We know that. We don't need to go there. We've seen enough celebrities who are unhappy to know that money isn't the answer. But I feel that one of the really beautiful things that's happened for me, who went through a long period of my life of saying, I can manage without or with very little money. And I lived in an economy where my food and accommodation was supplied for me, so I didn't have to pay for it. I actually lived quite a long time without really handling money much. And what I can say to you is that it didn't work in the long term. And I'm really grateful that I discovered this way of starting to engage in money, because it allows me to respect my natural wishes. And sometimes that is to go on a holiday that costs money, or to go somewhere or do something or create something, and all of them cost money. But at least I feel free now. It's like, okay, if I want to do that, let's get the money to do it so that I can actually enjoy those things that I feel like doing.
Thank you so much for saying that. That makes
permission given.
Wonderful. Perfect. Thank you. So let's go to a question that there's a lot of people asking this, and I know you've heard this one before because I've been hearing this from my friends as well. This is an anonymous question. I have a conflict about charging for my services as an astrologer, which is something that is not respected by the culture. I tend to give these services away and don't have a real feeling for my value and for what I provide. And let me add, this is me adding this, that many of my friends who do spiritual practice, whether it's Reiki, energy, they have a really hard time charging for it because they feel like if this person can't afford it, I need to give it to them so that to raise them up. Can you address that whole big picture?
Yeah, this is probably a question we could talk about, only this question, for way more than an hour, which we won't do, but at least we'll get started with it. And it is something that I will address more in the course as well, because it's such an important topic. Many of my friends are in the same category, so I know exactly, and I've been through all the stages of not charging and charging a lot, being afraid to charge a lot. So I'm definitely going to speak from experience as well. Look, the first thing is that I really understand in religious, the religious influence on our culture, which has linked money with the devil and with evil, and has also said that spiritual work should never be paid. And we have many examples of monks and nuns who have not received cash, although they do get a lot of value because they're always pretty well looked after. But so we have this deep kind of cultural reference point of believing that spirituality and money don't go together, or even that doing good and money don't go together. And this is one of the things, when I had this conversation with money, it was really clear that work that is doing good is what real work is. That is our real contribution. And that is exactly what money is there to reward. Precisely. I mean, money will come to anybody who's really interested in it. So it will come to people also who create businesses that also create harm. And we know that. But it is an energy that especially responds, interestingly, to the kind of energy you give when you're doing work that you love. But if you close the doors to it and say, no, I can't charge, I can't receive money for this, the money actually can't come in. And so that's one part. We actually need to give ourselves permission to receive money for our work. Now, there's another thing, and this is a kind of business point, and it took me a while to learn this. When I first, I moved to Australia in 2012, and I didn't know a single person in Australia, and I had to start making money kind of out of nothing so that I could pay my bills. And a lot of the people who I met at that time didn't have very much money. And so I couldn't charge much. I did charge because I knew that I needed it, but I couldn't charge very much because they didn't have it. So I could come along to you and say, oh my goodness, your work is amazing. You should be charging $300 an hour. And you can say to me, well, my clients can't afford that. And if they can't afford it, they can't afford it. That's absolutely legitimate. So one of the things that really shifted for me was somebody introduced me to providing my service. I was actually invited to do a webinar for a whole lot of business owners. And after that, a whole lot of them signed up, and I'd never had that experience before. And I started to figure out, and it took me quite a long time to figure out, why did these people sign up where that wouldn't happen in the place where I lived? And I realized it was because those are people, and it doesn't have to be business owners, but in this case it was, those are people who have money and also know the value of investing in themselves. I was talking about energy. They knew they needed more energy. They were tired. They'd been working really, really hard for years, and they knew the value of themselves. So they invested. So if you want to charge money, and you need to, if you want to make money, which you need to, then you need to work with at least some people who can pay for your services at the level that you want to charge. And I say this, it's really obvious when I say it, but the number of people who are struggling inside themselves with trying to charge money, and exactly as you said, Lisa, that the people they're speaking to literally can't afford it. So when you want to work with people who can't afford it, you either do swaps, which is the way most of us started out with that kind of business, or what I do now is I charge quite high fees to people who have lots of money. I run classes for people who don't have so much money, and I provide free activations and other stuff on Facebook and on YouTube almost every single day of the year. So the free stuff makes me feel good. You know, it makes me feel good in my conscience, and I do stuff that I absolutely love doing for free. So it doesn't feel like work to me. It feels like this is what I do for pleasure. It's some of my best work, and I share that for free. And I do it really, every single day I put something out almost. And then I feel really good about having courses like, a $300 course, a $500 course, a $1,500 course, or more expensive, depending on who for and what it is. And all of that sorted out according to who the people are. And then I charge a whole lot more for my private coaching, A, because I can, and B, because people are willing to pay for it. And I couldn't charge that much when I started because I wasn't up to that level yet. And I'm sure that in 5 or 10 years' time, I'll be able to charge probably 10 times what I do now. But, we have to get to that place. I know someone who charges $10,000 a month. We have to get to the place where we can attract that kind of client if you want to. and you might not ever want to, and that's absolutely fine. So there's a little bit of business sense in here, which most coaches and healers and astrologers are not really taught. And it's also, it's a question of really listening to the people you want to work with. And if they don't have any money, please go and find some people who do. Because you will rip yourself apart trying to charge money to people who don't have any otherwise. So find a market, a group of people who are willing to pay for your services.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Let's do a question here from Angie, who says, in your experience of working with students and clients, does money have a consistent personality, so to speak, or does it change as it's expressed through each individual?
That's a really beautiful question. And Lisa and I just joked before we started, and she said, oh, you probably answered every question. I've never been asked that question before. So thank you, Angie. So the thing that's fascinated me is that when we do that exercise, like I led at the beginning of this call, of having a conversation with money, there is a remarkable consistency in the messaging and the tone and the character of money, because it is always generous, it is always kind, it's always loving. It can be sharp, and sometimes in my book it's quite sharp. You know, it doesn't mollycoddle. It doesn't make you feel like, oh yeah, everything's okay when you're actually in a mess. It will show you if you're in a mess. So the quality of energy of money I found to be surprisingly consistent, actually. How money expresses itself through you is a whole different thing. And if we look at it like this, if you think of somebody you know really well, and that person is essentially the same person wherever they go, but when they talk to this person, they laugh a lot. And when they talk to this person, they're maybe very quiet and they listen a lot. And when they talk to somebody else, or when they're in a business meeting and they're in their smart suit and everything, they're different. So we express ourselves differently in every connection that we have. And so the beautiful thing about this is that we can have a relationship with this energy, and then you get to express that relationship through your life. And that's why the course is about expressing your soul's purpose. To me, that's what it's all about. Money gives us, it's a part of giving us this freedom to express myself as the unique human being that I am, but supported by this universal, beautiful energy.
Okay, thank you. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're here with Sarah McCrum, learning about her upcoming course, The Generous Loving Energy of Money, which begins Wednesday, July 10th. And you can log on to lovingenergyofmoney.com for all the details and to register. Let's go ahead and get back to some questions. We got plenty lined up here. Here's a question from Houston, who says, how long did it take you to see a significant change in money and income coming in when you started this?
Okay, I'm going to tell you the true story. So when I first wrote the book, because of some things that I'd heard, I was a little bit scared of having channeled a book. It wasn't something that I did. I'd never done it before. I'd never channeled any writing. And I'd heard that sometimes, when people do things like that, awful things happen to them. Funnily enough, I'd heard that awful things happen to you if you don't follow the advice in the book. And I didn't have any money at the time at all. So I knew I wasn't following the advice in the book. And in a very contradictory way, I decided just to ignore it for a while. It was just like, okay, interesting, beautiful, what's in there. But I'm clear. I think the truth is I felt such a bad example because I didn't have any money. I just couldn't quite face that. And I was lucky that I was thrown into the situation, as I mentioned, where I moved to Australia and I didn't know anybody and I had to pay for everything very quickly. And so I had to start really at the most difficult end, which is being faced by real challenges. Having to get $550 together for my rent this week, and I don't know where to find it. And I just had to rely on what was in the book. And so I followed various different instructions. And the amazing thing is it always worked. Actually, I can honestly say, even in those first couple of years, although I'd been in a situation before where I had not been able to pay bills, literally at the most horrible. end of that kind of stuff. It worked. Once I started to apply it, it worked. I will also say that I sometimes went through a month or two, once I had a little bit of money coming in, things were working, where I found it really hard to raise my level up to the next level. So what I've experienced is that it's been a series of steps, if you like. So I remember what it was like when probably I could rely on having $20 in my bank account pretty much all the time, but that was all. And if a $100 bill came in, it could be a challenge. The money might be there, but it wasn't always. And I can remember where I got to kind of $200. I could pretty much rely on that and not feel afraid at that level. And then gradually it went up and went up in kind of stages where there was a point where I felt like, I don't think I'm ever going to drop down there again. Even if my bank account, I could have a big bill today and pretty much everything might go, but I know that it's just going to fill in again really, really quickly. But I also know that there are many, many steps ahead of me. Okay, so I'm kind of partway along this, but I don't ever really worry about bills, whereas before I used to constantly have to think about bills. Now I can kind of pace myself with all that kind of thing. I can start to invest a bit into new projects and stuff, which I couldn't have even imagined doing that before. And I know the time will come when that will be much bigger. So I think that to sum up, what I want to say is you can actually get results on a case-by-case basis all the time. But at the same time, there's this sense that there's a sort of journey of building your capacity and your ability, that it's 7 years since I started really actively practicing this. And I think that I'm not super fast, and I'm very grateful for that. I've had huge financial miracles a few times in my life, but the business that I had those miracles in also went out of business. It failed. And that was a big lesson to me, not to rely on huge miracles and think, I've made it, I could do that, so I can do anything, because it simply wasn't true. So I feel like I've literally built step by step by step by step. And the one thing I'll say is the more I've done it, when I go back to the book, I see that all that stuff that I wasn't sure about at the beginning is so true. It's actually been really fascinating for me to see that. It's just, there's something in there. But when you really get it, it's like, oh my goodness, that's really how it works.
Okay. Well, this is actually a really good lead-in, because there are several people who are asking about something that you just said about how you make it to a certain level and you don't really have fear about losing it all. Like, for example, here's an anonymous question. Is it okay to save money, or should this method always work?
Okay, I'm just so glad you asked that question. This is not a method for doing everything by miracles. Okay, it's not a method of expecting money to drop into your hands magically. It does happen quite often, so I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. It does happen that people have really surprise things happening. But the fundamental message about money is about building a long-term relationship with it, which means sorting out your bank accounts and your PayPal accounts and your business, or whatever the ways are that you receive money and you pay money, and being kind of really organized and dealing with the whole thing and making decisions. So if you want to save money for your retirement, or to buy a property, or to invest in something else, it's entirely your choice. It's your soul's choice, really. It can be your head's choice or your soul's choice. It's entirely up to you. The money doesn't have anything like, oh, you shouldn't do that. What it will say, though, is that if you try to just collect stuff that there's no life in it, you don't use it, you don't need it, you don't want it, you don't enjoy it, that the energy out of that tends to atrophy. So you will probably find yourself maybe losing stuff in other ways. So energy is alive, and there's much more support where we have enjoyment and flow. But saving, the thing that's really important to remember about saving is whether it's in the bank, or whether it's in some other form of saving, or a pension, or whatever, and different language for different countries, that money is always working. the only time money doesn't work really is when you stuff it under your bed or in a piggy bank. But if it's, you can have your own opinion of what the bank might do with it, but banks don't leave your money sitting in accounts. They're using it and doing things with it all the time. It's constantly flowing through the world's markets, supporting business, supporting the economy, supporting all of us actually to live in that economy. So money really never sleeps. It's a very lively energy. And for me, the key is to be able to tune into what feels right, what feels good, what feels resonant for you to do with your money, because it's entirely up to you.
Okay, well, thank you. And this is wonderful. It's leading us down this path to different questions. You mentioned banking, et cetera. And there's a lot of anger around money, as I'm sure you're aware. We've got a question here from Bruce who says, why would I want a relationship with stuff that has been used to corrupt politicians and be used as a reason to fight wars and kill innocent people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are many things that have been used to do terrible things. The most probably prevalent, familiar one, of course, is God. God, in the name of God, some of the worst crimes of humanity have been committed. And as a result, of course, many people don't want to have a relationship with God, which I really get. It's a really tricky question, this. My experience of it is that if somebody is a person who fundamentally is probably very unaligned, both with the loving energy of money or unaligned with life, or they're very disturbed in their relationship with life for whatever reason, and of course there are many people like that around, what they do with money is not about the money itself. It's about them. So like many things, I mean, people actually do terrible things with people, even with children, with animals. We know that. In my view, it's the people who are responsible for their behavior. And so one of the reasons why I teach this stuff, once I really discovered what was happening with this kind of energy of money and this message about money, is that when we develop this kind of relationship, loving relationship with money, it actually helps us to resolve some of the conflicts inside ourselves. And those conflicts that I experience they may be smaller versions, but they're not much different from the conflicts that any other human being experiences. I have never in my life wanted to kill somebody, but I have felt some really terrible energy. Like I felt the energy in me of like really nasty, really harmful feelings. And I would be willing to bet that if anybody can be really honest and touch in with their feelings, we all have some really dark feelings in us. Most of us don't need to express them. If you're on a spiritual path, you usually need to face those feelings at some point and kind of find resolution with them. So I feel that it's up to each one of us to take deep responsibility in our relationship with money. Be an example of somebody who has a different kind of relationship. Contribute to the collective of humanity through that energy that you start to emanate when you do resolve this conflict with money, the inner conflict that most people struggle with, and spread that, share that, get it working for you. Like if it doesn't work for you, tell me, because I want to know that, because my experience is that it actually works for us. As we come into alignment with it, it starts to work better. And I really believe that if we can share that, more and more people will say, hold on a moment, life feels better that way. We're naturally tuned as human beings to want to feel good. So if somebody sees you doing it and that you feel better, and then they might say, hey, what's that? What are you doing? And you find yourself starting to share it. And I understand that money is connected with power, and there's some very, very challenging, dark things that go on around it. But I know that me feeling better and having a better relationship with it, and all the people who I know where I've influenced them and they've influenced each other, that has contributed something to mitigating, and I believe eventually will overcome those really dark energies and dark forces. How long that will take remains to be seen, but I'm willing to show up for that journey.
You and me both. Thank you for that. Looking at the clock here, we have time for a few more questions, but before we take those, I want to give a few details about the course itself. People are asking about that, so this would be a good time. Once again, it's called The Generous, Loving Energy of Money, and this is going to be a fascinating 7-week journey under Sarah's expert guidance, where you'll discover the essential practice of making beautiful requests, the most natural way to engage with money so that it works for you. The 7-week course takes place on Wednesdays at noon Pacific, starting Wednesday, July 10th. And if you can't join us live, a lot of people are asking about this. That's fine. You won't miss the teachings. You'll receive audio and video recordings, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. And also, don't forget, the Shift Network offers a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until July 24th, in this case, to make sure that it's a good fit. We want you to be happy. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. Also, everyone who registers receives the Generous Loving Energy of Money bonus collection. First, you receive an ebook by Sarah McCrum entitled Love Money, Money Loves You. And then you'll get a video interview with Sarah and Matt Murphy called Getting Real About Money. Next, you'll receive a PDF guide from Sarah entitled Money is Your Friend, So Talk With It. You'll also get an audio recording from Sarah with music by Gary Malkin entitled Transformance, Money is the Energy of Love. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Friday, June 28th, you'll receive an extra gift, and that is a 14-part audio course from Sarah McCrum entitled The Energy of Money. And before we get back into questions, Sarah, let me ask you, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
The thing that I enjoy sharing more than anything is the energy itself. I spent 22 years training with Chinese masters, so all we learnt about was energy. And when we start talking about money, when we start exploring questions about money, communicating with it, all the kinds of things that we'll do in the course, there is this incredibly beautiful energy. It's actually just quite simply a really beautiful feeling that starts to kind of envelop me and everybody else. And you can feel it, it's really tangible. And to share that, it makes us feel so connected, and it opens up this kind of softness. You know, it's kind of, you know, that feeling like, this is what life is supposed to feel like. It's that kind of feeling, because a lot of my life I felt like, I don't think life is supposed to feel like this. I think it's supposed to be different. There's a book that's called, what is it? Something like the life we know we're supposed to. It's not quite like something like the life we know we're supposed to live. It's not quite like we know is possible. Something like that. It's that feeling. And for me, as you start to let that feeling into your being, all of the rest gets easier. So that's what actually I really want to share more than anything else.
All right. Well, I'm sure looking forward to that. Thank you. Let's take a question here from Vibe. We've got some people asking about karma in general, and Vibe wants to know, do you think that we can have chosen a path before we get this physical body? For example, if we may have chosen that we should experience poverty?
It does seem as though some people have chosen that, but that doesn't mean you have to stay. Like, I don't think we're bound by anything. So you mentioned karma, Lisa, which this may connect in with. So for example, if you had abused money a lot in previous lives, you might have opted this time to start off with very little money and to see what it's like to be on the other side. I've done a lot of work with karma. And the key thing about it is that we get to experience what we've done to other people in previous lives. But the point is not a kind of lifelong punishment. The point is quickly to come to the point where you recognize that. You recognize that that's not a good way to treat people, you really commit to not treating people that way anymore. You kind of clean up the karma. And then, in my experience, it's almost like your higher self takes the lid off and allows you to start to expand and grow again. So I had loads of issues like that, where I literally felt like I was being held back. I knew that I should be able to do much more than I was. I should be more successful than I was. I should be making more impact than I was. And a psychic actually told me that my higher self had literally, it was like it was holding me back and not letting me until I had sorted out a whole raft of really horrible karmic issues. So if anyone wants to know about karma, you ask me, because I've seen a lot. But the point is, as I resolved that stuff, and it took a bit of doing, but it's a methodology, you can do it, it's not that hard. I started to experience all that pressure of trying to hold me back started to be lifted off my shoulders. And I was able to literally, I would say, manifest or create more and more the life that I really was choosing and wanting to live. Before, I could barely even feel what I wanted, because everything was so confused inside me because of all that karmic stuff. So yes, it's absolutely possible, but it doesn't mean that you have to stay there for the rest of your life.
Okay, great. Well, let's move into a huge topic. We've got so many people asking about debt. For example, Cassie says, can you say anything about when we invite money in, and then as soon as it comes in, an unexpected bill or debt comes in? Other people are asking, how do I get out of debt? Go for it.
Yeah. Well, I know it's a big question. It's an important question. It is actually addressed in the book as well, which is interesting. So first of all, I need to say that I am not like a financial advisor type of person, and I don't do that kind of stuff. So where there are issues with debt, it's really important to get good advice. I don't think all advice is good, but there are some people around who I think teach really good advice about how to get out of debt. Now, the specifics of that particular issue, where the minute some money comes in, sometimes even a new bill comes in, there's actually quite a funny little bit in the book where it talks about that. This is where we do need to start to look at the beliefs we have. So, for example, you may be saying in your mind, oh, I always have so many bills, or I can never get ahead, or oh, it's impossible to have more money than, than I need for my bills, or why do I keep getting more bills? Now, if you're focusing all the time on bills, your focus, your attention is like a command into consciousness, essentially. So it's kind of like a command to money to give you a specific experience. And that experience that you're paying attention to is effectively what you're asking for. So if you are constantly worrying about your bills, the ironic and tough thing about that is that you will find yourself getting more and more bills. And I know that it is really hard to switch that around, because the reality is showing you that there are so many bills. But I've experienced it myself, and I've seen many other people experience it, that if you can start to pay attention to receiving more money, dealing with the bills as you have to and as best you can, but don't give all your energy to the bills, except for the joy of paying them off. If you can do that, that is amazing if you can. But actually, the pleasure of paying this one, but stay open to receiving money. Put your attention on the money or the energy of money or all the things that you would like to do as you have more money. That will actually bring you more. And as you get more, you will pay off the bills. Now, obviously, the same thing goes for debt. So paying off debts is just essentially making payments. It's making payments, hopefully on a regular basis. Those payments require you to have money. The book teaches you, and I'll teach in the course, like ways that you can interact directly with money so that you can influence it or ask for more than perhaps you have, or somehow get a raise, find different ways of expanding your money. If you can keep doing that, if you can keep that connection open with money and keep increasing the money, you will gradually pay off your debt. You, of course, need to have the discipline. Anyone who gets into debt, the first thing you have to have is discipline. And I don't think there's any way around that unless you have a fairy godmother or you get an inheritance or something. And, that doesn't even then you really need discipline, because if you have more money, you need a lot more discipline. Okay, so at one level I would see debt as being a big kind of, let's say it's like a little talking to from your higher self saying, okay, come on, it's time to get some discipline into your life, and put things in order and focus in the right direction, the direction that's actually going to bring you more, rather than just keep eating away. And it does work. It may take time, because we're changing not only your mindset, you're changing your energy. That's more important. So it might take some time, but with commitment, you can do it.
Okay, thank you for that. And then let's go to the flip side. Instead of owing money, Fatima is asking, how do you suggest I handle being owed lots of money?
Yes, well, that's an interesting one. I can't think of a specific story right now, but I've heard many stories of people talking about this where they've been owed lots of money. Somebody who owes you money has actually had some energy from you, essentially, at a time when they didn't have that energy for themselves. Now, sometimes if you can open up to be more receptive to money, really open up this relationship that I'm talking about, people start paying back money that they owed you. It usually comes by surprise. Sometimes you'll be able to get into a position where you can just ask for it. You feel comfortable about asking for it, because often it's really difficult to ask. So you might be able to just feel so good and confident that you can ask and completely let go of whether, if they say, no, I can't, you just accept that, because there's no point fighting against that. If somebody doesn't have the money, they don't have the money. Most of us know what it's like not to have the money for something. So there's no point fighting against that. But that's the first thing to do, is to become more receptive, because you never know. There are so many stories I've heard where that's happened. The other thing that I found, I remember once I inherited a tiny bit of money from my godmother, I think, and I instantly gave it to somebody who I was living with at the time, the whole lot of it, and it disappeared, and it became clear that I was never going to get it back again. And it was really important for me to let go of that. And the way I do that, and I do this just by when I'm spending money, whenever I pay for things, I just recognize there's always more money. I can always make more money. Now, obviously, there will be some people for whom that's very difficult to make more money, I know, but most of us, we can. And the most extraordinary, remarkable things happen when you have that attitude that money is something that's an unlimited energy. It's constantly there for us, always. We can always tap into it. Sometimes it comes in kind, sometimes it comes in cash. It doesn't really matter. And so rather than getting completely hung up on something that may not come back to you, let that money come in whatever way that it can. And if it happens to come back as the repaying of the debt, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got a question here from Maureen, who says, how does your work compare with the concept of the law of attraction? It sounds like there are similarities, but also differences.
Yes, there are definitely similarities, obviously, because the law of attraction is actually teaching you how to attract more into your life. And there's no question that when you get this kind of relationship with money, you become more attractive to it. And the principles underlying that are really similar. I think, and I don't want to speak for all teachers, like different people teach the law of attraction and they teach it in different ways. So it's really difficult to generalize about that. But what I do feel is that probably the most different or the most radical part of what I teach is this recognition of money as an energy that is not neutral, but genuinely generous, loving, and all of that. It's an aspect of love. It's an aspect of the divine, really, if you want to put it in that language. And so very often the conceptualization of money is as energy, but it's a neutral energy. That really makes a difference to experience for yourself the love and the energy that arises as you start to really relate and connect with money. There is no question in my mind that that is real. And that changes the essence of who we are. I've seen many people with the law of attraction often use their minds a lot to try to create things. So that is a method. If you pay real attention, and money is one of the things you want, or it's a house or a car, whatever it is, those kinds of things. Money does come to that kind of attention. But first of all, for many people, it's very difficult to do that because they have contradictions inside themselves. And there's a lot written now and spoken about that, about how if you have contradictory subconscious or unconscious beliefs, it doesn't work. But if they're subconscious or unconscious, that's really difficult because you don't know that they're there, and so it just doesn't work. What I found is that resolving the fundamental relationship with money essentially allows that law of attraction to work. And like any love relationship, it doesn't resolve just because I tell you that this is all about love. It's not easy to love a partner. It's not easy. Love for human beings is not easy. And it's also not hard because we can all do it. We're all wired for it, but it takes consciousness. You know, we actually have to say, yeah, I'm going to remember that this is about love. Just like we do with our husbands and wives and partners, we actually have to remember to come back to love, and that love is more important than all the stuff that the mind goes crazy with. So in my experience, that releases that inner conflict. And allows you to open up on your journey to creating whatever kind of relationship with money you want to.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Looking at the clock, we're about out of time here. This has been a fascinating conversation. I think we could go on forever with this. I want to thank our viewers for being with us today and for all of your fantastic questions. Once again, the Generous Loving Energy of Money starts Wednesday, July 10th. And again, you can visit lovingenergyofmoney.com to learn more and to hopefully register. So before we cut you loose, Sarah, do you have any final words for our viewers?
I think in today's climate, probably is exactly the right word to use, in a world where many people are deeply afraid of the future and of what's going to happen, and where in our news channels we are now bombarded every single day with often devastating news about our future. So it's a very, very heightened context in which to run this program. One of the things that I didn't expect when I started to work with this is that people who were in deep grief, for example, around loss of species or other stuff that's going on, people who are politically active or spiritually very active, and they came to see me, and they were completely disempowered by what was happening. It was like conscious people were losing hope or didn't know what to do. One of the things that's given me the most joy is to see them saying, I feel hopeful about the future now. Somehow by resolving this issue about money, because money lies beneath all the problems that we're dealing with. It's because of people not having the right relationship that all that stuff is going on. When people resolve that within themselves and come into a loving relationship, it gives them power again. And when you have power, you can do something. It connects you with your creativity. And so I see people coming alive and making a contribution that they longed to make before, but they had lost the power to do so. So I think the deeper work that's going on here is really about you and me as a human being on this planet at this time. And how do we live a really full human life that we share with other people and make that the blueprint for life on Earth, rather than the one that, is so distorted at the moment, is a very uncomfortable way that people are living. I think that's the deeper promise, really.
Beautifully spoken. Thank you so much, Sarah. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Well, once again, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great day, everyone.